Right now, somewhere, it is raining. Someone just pulled a blanket a little tighter and felt nothing but comfort. You know that feeling. Rain on a window, a quiet room. Maybe you fall asleep to it on purpose. But the real answer to what rain used to mean for a human being is far stranger and far more dangerous than anything you feel today. Picture yourself 60,000 years ago. No roof but stone, no coat but hide. The rain starts at dawn and does not stop. Not by noon, not by nightfall. Your fire is struggling. Your feet are bare on wet rock. And somewhere close, in the dark, something else is also looking for shelter from the same storm. For almost all of human history, a long rain was not a mood. It was a threat with three separate ways to kill you. The first was cold. A wet body loses heat dozens of times faster than a dry one. Without waterproof clothing or a sealed shelter, hours in cold rain could push a healthy person into hypothermia, even in parts of Africa. At higher elevations, during wet seasons you might assume were warm. The second was water itself. Many early shelters sat near rivers or hillsides, so flash floods were not rare. Archaeologists have found flood sediment layered inside caves people once called home. Some of those caves were never lived in again. The third was the most unsettling. Rain pushed predators into shelter too. Sometimes the same cave a family was sleeping in. At certain sites in southern Africa, human remains and large predator remains turn up in the same layer of earth. Some human skulls carrying puncture marks that match the teeth of a big cat almost perfectly. So rain did not just make life uncomfortable. It compressed the whole dangerous world into one small dry space. And in the middle of that space, one task mattered more than any other. Keep the fire alive. Here is why that was terrifying. For most of human history, people were far better at maintaining a fire than starting one from nothing. Controlled fire use goes back hundreds of thousands of years, but striking a spark from scratch is a separate, harder skill many people never mastered. If your only fire went out in a storm, you might not get another one. So groups carried embers, smoldering coals wrapped in green leaves, or chunks of a slow-burning fungus that could hold a spark for hours, functioning almost like a biological lighter. When the 5,000-year-old Iceman was found frozen in the Alps, he carried a small fire kit on his belt. Tinder fungus, flint, a striking stone, dry backup material. Even thousands of years later, people still treated fire loss as a real emergency, worth its own dedicated toolkit. So when the rain came, shelter was not the first priority. The fire was. Push it deeper into the cave. Shield it with hide or brush. Feed it carefully. Not too much, not too little. Find dead branches still protected under a tree canopy. Dry underneath even after days of rain. Split open wet logs to reach the dry wood inside. Some groups used birch bark as kindling, since a chemical inside it lets it burn even when damp. For hours, sometimes for days, one person's whole job might have simply been sitting beside that fire, protecting it. Because that fire was not comfort. It was warmth, light, safety from predators, cooked food, and the center of the entire group's world. Letting it die was not careless. It could be fatal for everyone. So the fire held. You were mostly dry, but you could not leave. What did you do with that time? You built things. Cave floors across the world are packed with the debris of that boredom. Tiny stone flakes chipped off while someone shaped a tool, concentrated exactly where a person would sit near firelight for hours. In one South African cave, archaeologists uncovered what looks like a 100,000-year-old workshop for grinding pigment, complete with shells used as mixing containers and bone tools for stirring. This was not emergency work. It was a system, built by someone with nowhere else to be. Bone needles start appearing tens of thousands of years ago, thin and precise, with tiny hand-drilled holes. You do not make one while running from danger. You make it sitting still, with hours you did not choose to have. At a Neanderthal site in France, researchers found a fragment of twisted plant fiber, the oldest known piece of string on Earth. At a site in Germany, they found a small ivory tool with holes and spiral grooves, built for one purpose: twisting plant fibers into rope. Someone carved a machine by hand, just to make string faster. Rope is slow and repetitive, close to the perfect bad weather project, and it changed everything after it. Better shelters, traps, tools lashed to handles. An enormous share of early technology quietly depends on someone once deciding to sit still and twist fiber until it held. People made their shelters livable too. In one cave, researchers found layers of grass and reeds arranged as bedding, tens of thousands of years old, insect-repelling leaves laid on top. The whole thing periodically burned and replaced to stay clean. Someone was not just surviving in that cave. They were keeping house. And then, the part almost nobody expects. Deep inside certain caves in France and Spain, far past where anyone would sit for warmth, are paintings of lions, horses, and rhinos, some more than 30,000 years old, rendered with an understanding of anatomy and motion that still stops researchers today. These images are not near the entrance. They are hundreds of meters in, through passages you would have to crawl through, reachable only by carrying a small flame into total darkness. Nobody does that on a good day. You do it when the rain has been falling for 2 days. Every tool is already sharpened, and there is nothing left to do but go deeper and make something out of nothing. We cannot prove every painting began as a rainy day project, but the pattern is hard to ignore. The most creative period in early human history overlaps almost exactly with the conditions that would have kept people trapped indoors the longest, and that points to something bigger. Rain may not have just produced tools and art. It may have helped produce culture itself. Picture 15 or 20 people stuck together for days with nothing to do. What happens? They talk. In one well-known study of the Jew/Huanzi people of the Kalahari, an anthropologist compared daytime conversation to conversation around the evening fire. By day, people mostly discuss practical matters, resources, complaints, logistics. At night, by firelight, the vast majority of talk shifted to stories, songs, and shared history. Firelight seems to change what people are willing to say. And what got shared was not idle chatter. It was survival knowledge, where water still runs in the dry season, which plants are safe, where the good stone is, how to track one particular animal. Layered on top of that were the stories, the myths, the explanations for where rain comes from and why. Every culture on Earth has some version of a rain story, and someone, somewhere, invented the first one, almost certainly while sitting through the very storm it tried to explain. Some of the oldest oral traditions ever verified against real geological events describe coastline changes from roughly 7,000 years ago, carried forward on memory and repetition alone. That kind of continuity does not happen by accident. It happens because groups spent enormous stretches of time doing one thing: sitting together, telling the same story again and again. So a rainy stretch was never dead time. It was transmission time. The hours when knowledge passed from old to young, when skills were taught by demonstration, when the whole group's memory got refreshed. And rain was not only a threat. After heavy rain, soft ground holds the clearest tracks you will ever see. Rock hollows fill with clean water, some deliberately carved deeper to hold more. Mushrooms and tubers appear almost overnight. Insects surface. In tropical Africa, termites still swarm right after a storm, one of the densest protein sources available, needing no tools at all, just hands. Early humans very likely gorged on the same swarms chimpanzees still do. Think about how you treat waiting today. A delayed flight feels unbearable after 20 minutes. Your brain still carries the old alarm that says stillness is dangerous. You fill it with a screen instead of a fire. You scroll instead of carve. The urge is ancient. Only the tool changed. The people who handled rain the worst were not the ones who lacked skill. They lacked patience, the ability to sit still long enough to make something out of nothing. Evolution favored tolerating stillness without wasting it. A group that could sit through a storm calmly, teaching a child to grind pigment or twist fiber, had a real edge over one that simply waited. That difference, patience turned into production, may be a quiet reason your ancestors survived to have you. So what did ancient humans actually do when it rained for days on end? Nearly everything that made the rest of their lives possible. They protected fire. They built tools for the next hunt. They twisted rope, sewed clothing, ground pigment, told stories that carried knowledge forward, and sometimes crawled into the dark to paint something that would outlast everyone who ever saw it made. Boredom, as you understand it, did not really exist for them. When survival depends on what you build with your hands in the next few hours, there is no room left for boredom. Only the fire, the work, and the waiting. Right now, somewhere, it is raining. You pull the blanket a little tighter. You feel nothing but comfort. But that comfort was built, hour by rained-out hour, by people who once feared this exact sound, and turned their fear into everything that came next.